Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our two-day online training course, Entrepreneurial Success Mastery, Innovation and AI Tools. I am Dr. Rafa Jalad, Dean of the Faculty of Business and Communication at An-Najah National University. We are thrilled to have with us today Mr. Vemund Rudshagen, a strategic advisor. A strategic advisor at Rio Door Studios and a renowned keynote speaker on entrepreneurship and innovation. With over 7 years of experience as a management consultant, he has successfully led numerous innovation projects across various industries. Vemund's vast experience and dedication to equipping entrepreneurs with the tools and mindset to de-risk and shape tomorrow businesses will guide us through this journey. I invite you all to take full advantage of this rare opportunity to learn from such experienced and visionary leader. Let's get started. Let's get started on this exciting journey of entrepreneurial mastery and innovation. The floor is yours, Vemund.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Jalad. I'm honored to be here with you this evening, and I'm happy to see that there's so much engagement around this topic, a topic that tends to engage me, and increasingly is something that both private persons and professional corporations out there is sort of embracing as they see the need for speed, innovation, and new products. So I'll briefly introduce myself. Besides what Mr. Jalal just did here, I'd like to start with just saying that the aim for this course during the next 2 evenings is to learn how to increase the likelihood of actually succeeding as an entrepreneur. And the key here is the second sort of sub-sentence there, that we want to do that through systematically creating and exploring and validating new business ideas. And as we'll see, there are some ways to do that that works more efficiently than others. So I'll be happy to share some thoughts and best practices on that. And we'll also start to get acquainted with how a couple of largely used AI tools can be leveraged in that manner. And we'll also, at the end of the course, tomorrow that is, we'll zoom more in on self-management and how to sort of steer up these processes and lead innovation in teams and on your own. So with that being said, my name is Vemund Rudshagen. I'm born and raised Norwegian, but my father is Palestinian, and I'm proud to be half Palestinian. I've worked over 10 years with various innovation and product and business development sort of problems and projects, and 7 years and more than 7 years as a management consultant. So currently I'm strategic advisor at Rio Door Studios, which is a corporate venture studio in Oslo, the capital of Norway. And prior to that, I worked at Knowit Management Consulting, and where I was the head of innovation there. Knowit is one of Scandinavia's largest IT and tech and advisory companies. And so I've sort of been exposed to projects and problems spanning a lot of industries, banking and finance, a lot of mobility, but also the public sectors and many others. So thematically, I've been high in organizations working with the C-suite and top management, but I've also been a team coach on team level, playing with really hands-on product development issues. So I think that is one of my core strengths, is probably the width of experience. I also have, I'm an economist. I have a Master of Science degree in business strategy and management, with a supporting minor in both finance and entrepreneurship. So I'm super excited to share some thoughts with you. Before we jump into the agenda and how we're going to spend our next minutes and hours together, I do have some rules for this course, and it seems that they are adhered to in quite a good manner already. So, as you know, we'll do 2 sessions, each of 4 hours, from 6 to 10 p.m. I'll try to be relatively pointedly in the starting points. And we have set up a combination of presenter slides and exercises, and there will be Q&As at the end of each session. That means that please hold your questions during the individual slides, but please also note them down if you want to, so we can address them later. I do think the audio is controlled centrally by Mr. Jalad and his coworkers, so that might not be an issue, but in case it should be up to you guys, please remember to mute your microphones. Also, we'll delve a bit more into the levels we're at in the next couple of slides. But depending on your level going into this course, it might feel a bit intense. The format is also not ideal because we're doing this live and online, but hopefully it will be really rewarding depending on your background and level of expertise. So please stay in there. So yeah. First of all, before we present anything and how we'll lay out the agenda, because the agenda might be affected by the following, I would like all participants to go to a webpage called menti.com and enter the code you see on the screen now. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, and we'll have a service set up for you. All right, so we're getting 14 participants already. That's good. 15 and counting. All right, 25 people. Great. Some still coming up. That's awesome. Really
Okay,
cool. Do you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, because I have another one. We have the same screen like yours, this
Sorry?
screen, yeah?
Sorry?
We have the same screen
Yeah.
like this.
Yes, you have the white instruction screen here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's correct.
Oh,
Awesome. Approximately high are we counting the participants to? We're at 27 currently now. Do you know how high we should go before I start the questions? We're at 28. That's awesome. $29. Cool. So please let us know if anybody is struggling with doing this. You can either scan the QR code with the camera on your phone, which will bring you automatically into the survey, or you can go to www.menti.com and then enter these 8 digits. All right, so we're approaching 30. I think with respect for the timeline that we might go ahead and run our first questions. Hopefully you guys should see a question on your cell phones or laptops or whatever you're on when we actually start to approach this first question. So please go ahead and answer and let me know if you cannot fill out the question. So the question here is how you will rate your own your personal innovation competence in terms of 2 dimensions. One is theoretical. I know most methods and frameworks in theory very well. I feel confident in them on paper or in theory, but I haven't really worked on them maybe. And then practical is regardless of your theoretical level, I'm very experienced with innovation. Perhaps you've even started a few companies. What do I know? So it's just to get a feeling of where we are at in the participants list here in terms of level. Well, for those curious, you can see that the shaded sort of line or area in the background there tends to show the spread of the participants. So we can see that the blue one is evenly spread with most of you rating maybe 2 to 4 on the 10-point scale, and then we can see the same on the red level, but a lot more. If there are any participants that haven't already joined us at menti.com, then you can see on the top of my screen here that you can go to www.menti.com and you can use the code 27 31 36 79. It's perfectly okay to join at this point as well. I won't ask you a lot of questions. There are just 3 of them, and this is the first, but it'll help me get a feel of the course, and it'll help you guys also see how you score yourselves against the other participants here in the introduction. All right, so we're at 23 answers. I think we're at 29 participants maybe when we started this exercise. 26 now. Awesome. By the way, to the Mr. Jalan and the faculty staff, are we have we activated the live chat so we can discover if there are any issues with people seeing the screen or hearing properly, or is that sort of in the dark as of now?
Yeah, we activated, in fact.
Awesome. There we are. That's great. Okay, it seems to be a wish for sharing the link there. I do think the link is just the menti.com/, but I'll double check that. Yeah, no, it's not. So all you have to do is go to menti.com and then type in the number. You'll be prompted for a number when you go to menti.com. So let me see if I can do that on another window here, menti.com. And then in this field, you type in the number. So menti.com is properly shared in the chat. All right, guys. With respect to the timeline, I think we'll go ahead and comment on the votes that we have gotten in. As we can see, if we hover over here, the large chunk of you seems fairly confident in your own theoretical knowledge with the methods and the frameworks we do have, with sort of a slight weight towards the left side and on the lower scale. So that's super cool to know that you might have heard some of the expressions and seen a couple of the frameworks we'll be using lately, but I also understand that it's not the majority of you, so to speak, that think you are theoretically super advanced on this matter. In the practical side, we do have the larger skew to the left, and that is cool. Might be seeing the blue and the red values together here might be an indication that we do have some students and academics in the audience, which wouldn't be a large surprise. So I'll be happy to take that with me. I think it's very good that we aren't too practical and apt on this. Firstly, because you will get more value in terms of not having done this already several times and perhaps therefore learning new things. And secondly, because you won't be as how to say, biased in terms of set methodologies and so forth. So thank you very much for answering this one. That was super helpful for me. I'll now forward to the next question, and it'll be just in the same manner. You'll be forwarded to the next question, and please now write in just what you do for a living. You don't have to use all the text fields. You can use just one. What we're aiming for here is a word cloud. So try to use one word, maybe two, but don't write a long sentence. For instance, if you are a CEO, just write CEO. If you are I don't know, farmer, just write farmer. Don't give me the whole sentence. The reason is we want the system to group the words together. So that being said, please go ahead and fill out the responses. Oh, podcaster. Awesome. Super cool. We have students. Yeah, I don't work. I'll take that on my account. Probably a bad choice of wording in the questions there. What do you do for a living? Might be wrong to say I interior designer, that's cool. Makeup, all right. Consultant, super cool. That's what I am myself. That's awesome. Students tends to pop out as a larger word as that's the answers are coming in. Football, awesome. We have a soccer player here, maybe an aspiring entrepreneur. That's awesome. Sales of bridal dresses, maybe. So sort of in the clothing retail industry. That's cool. Trader, all right. Is that like a financial trader, maybe? Handicrafts, that's awesome. So we see a couple of students also just choosing different types of words here. We've got a business owner there. That's awesome. And it says casa. Katsa? What is that? Casa. Katsa. Qazza. Feel free to write in the chat as we go along though. I won't be able to follow it super close, but I'll try to keep an eye on it from now to then. All right, we got 24 answers. This is telling me we're quite diverse groups. Some work in tourism. Um, some of you are students. We got a consultant. Some work more within nutrition, and of course we got lecturers also popping in there. If we merge these together and add on the professor and so forth, we do get a nice sort of landscape here. So this is wide and this is good because I think we aim to give a sort of a generic course on terms of in terms of early phase innovation and not industry specific. So that's super cool. Okay, this has given me a cool feeling of your professions. I think we'll go ahead and jump to the next question. All ready, guys? So, oh, and digital products. I didn't spot that until now. That's also awesome. That'll be super useful in the following course. Okay, bear with me. We're gonna be fast and sprint on to the next question. So, hopefully you will get an update here. And what I'm interested to learn here is what you are most eager to learn about in this course, and try to be as specific as possible. This time you don't have to write single words. You can write sentences. So please be as specific as possible. Don't be afraid to use many words. This is not the same type of a visualization as we used earlier. So share your thoughts on that, please. That will really help us see where we can focus the most and spend our time the best. And also let me know if you cannot answer this question of some technical issue. All right, set new creative business ideas. Awesome. Super cool. Idea initiation and testing in Palestinian and emerging market context. Awesome. Super cool. Learning, yeah. Hopefully you'll get that. Learn how to systematically generate explore. Seems like somebody is using our learning goals and feeding them into the system here. It's awesome, and we'll hopefully deliver on that as well. Improve skills, super cool, yeah. AI, innovation in meeting with AI, that's super cool. We'll touch on that as well. know the steps. Yeah, know the steps probably of the innovation process. That's awesome. Always when I see AI, I jump in without hesitation. Okay, awesome. Let's see if you're interested in innovation as well, although AI is a buzzword here. Developments of digital tools, cool. Increase my knowledge. Yeah, that's nice. Oh, research in virtual reality. That's high tech. That's cool. To be more entrepreneurial, innovative, and develop my skills. How to identify, generate creative ideas, understanding the process of translating initial ideas into viable products and services. Awesome. That is spot on what we're going to do here. And learn something outside my comfort zone. Okay, super cool. That itself is an important skill in entrepreneurship, being eager to actually challenge your own comfort zones. That's super cool. This is my first time, so I went to learn and develop my skills. Yep, we'll get that. Okay, guys, that's awesome. For those of you still writing, please follow your just finish or round off your sentences and submit them, and we'll take with us these things and use them as best we can. I'm most eager to learn about how early phase innovation can be applied in modern context to deliver services that are not only relevant and timely, but also allow me to fully explore. Okay, wow, super cool. Let's see if we can actually deliver on that ambition. I'd be happy to try at least. That's awesome. So glancing over the answers here broadly, I think we have set up an outline for you guys that will hopefully deliver on them. And trying to solve my new business problems. Oh, okay. Yep. Very depending on what types of business problems we're talking about here, I'll love to try to be able to help. Let me see if something came in last year. Self-development, awesome. Yep, we'll touch in that in the last module. Learn to survive within our circumstances. Yeah, if we're sort of looking at the modern business context and the way things are done today, I think we'll cover parts of that as well. Creative ideas, how to create a brand and introduce any idea to society and delve into entrepreneurship. Awesome. Okay, yeah, cool. So while this isn't a branding course, we will actually touch upon points used to effectively communicate your value proposition that aims to sell largely effectively. So I'll touch upon that as well, but we won't deep dive into branding. But I love that you have it on the radar because effective sales ultimately also come down to an effective brand and marketing strategy. So that's awesome. Okay, guys, awesome. Hopefully you can also relate to what the other ones have written here in this overview. I don't think this is too diverging, so it will be too far off trying to balance very different needs. I see quite the amount of overlap here. So we'll try to meet your hopes and expectations in as effectively as we can. That's awesome. All right. Pivot or persevere. Yeah, already here we have some lingo that's used in the innovation context. That's awesome. So we'll definitively touch into that as well. All right, guys. Perfect. We'll jump back into the main presentation. Hopefully you now see the previous slide and the agenda slide as of now. Let me know if you don't. So what you outlined here in this this quick sort of survey will help me allocate some of the focus of these sessions. The way the agenda is set up now is sort of lying in bed. We're not doing I don't know 70% of the content today and just 30% tomorrow. We will sort of zoom in on tomorrow's agenda and see when we'll have the breaks and the Q&As and so forth then. but I have set a line here to show you the structure of the course. So what we'll actually do is start with a brief story, which is from my own experience, and try to link that to the rest of the course. And then we will spend some time on our foundations. And the foundation here is sort of why we need new tools, why it's sort of a mindset that is quite adapted out there, depending on obviously which sort of school of thoughts you follow and when you went to school. We see the need for new tools. So we'll talk a bit about that. We will talk a bit about business models, because the whole course, this whole course centers around business models. And there are good reasons for that, which I'll come back to. And all business models, they don't exist in a vacuum. They have a business environment. And we'll talk a bit about that aspect as well. But we'll dwell most of the time in the foundation section on business models, just to make sure that we're on the same page and everybody knows what they are and why they're important. Then we'll talk a bit about some core innovation principles, and these are super, super important. So you will sort of have this to review later. We won't practice all the innovation principles, but you will see them. Some of you will spot them going, being repeated throughout the rest of the course. And then we'll actually have spent quite a lot of time on this first part, so then we'll have a break. And then we'll jump into the innovation method itself. And there are two things here we'll look at. We'll give you firstly an overview, and we'll see what the innovation process itself is. That's what I like to call the innovation engine. That's sort of what makes things run. But we also, using our engine, have to go into some, we have to pass some milestones in sequence. And we'll also talk about that during our innovation methods seance. And this is quite extensive. So getting all this into a course that is 8 hours is difficult. We will spend a lot of time looking at the overview, and we'll start dwelling into ideas and insights, but we use the rest of the steps, which is sketching out the ideas, to be more deliberate, to be more business model oriented, and then surfacing the assumptions, the so-called risky assumptions, and testing those will be also key. And so tomorrow we'll do have some exercises today, but tomorrow will also be more interactive, or in my personal opinion, I won't talk this day down, but tomorrow is even more cool and interesting in my view. That's sort of the hard examples and where the skills lie. So today is all about building foundations, and then tomorrow is going ahead and actually doing things. So yeah. All right. Without further ado, I have a brief story for you. I have some trouble with it's on my end on the sound, but I think that the images and the video I'm about to show you will speak for itself. So we'll start off with showing a video, and then we'll look into some points thereafter. So without further ado, I'll show you a video here. All right. This was actually a product made by a startup I worked in and partly led 10 years ago. So yeah, regard me as a sort of a co-founder of this startup. It was based on an idea, as you saw, of a smart bike, as we called it, which was essentially a bike simulator. It consisted of hardware. It had, as you saw, a software screen with 3D generated content that we made. It really simulated surroundings and what you saw on the screen. So it went up when you went uphill, it went down. It actually tilted down when the ground on the screen tended to tilt down. It shook, the whole thing shook, as in, yeah, when you sort of ran over gravel and stones, it tilted from side to side. As you saw, it had a gyro. And the whole thing was a super immersive experience. And we thought, okay, this is super cool. We gotta make this, man. And of course, there was a long road before we made this video. But what we did there was the following. The process we followed was the following. We had this idea, the product idea. And okay, thought that this is a design and engineering challenge. Technically, this is a challenge to make. So what we did here in this startup, we obviously made some sketches. We had engineers all the way from the hardware through the firmware and the software configuration, sketch out this bike, and we made a technical prototype. And then we made another technical prototype. And when the thing worked, and it could bear the weight of us, it actually went up, it actually went down, and had the functionality we had designed that it should have. Then we made a business plan, and we valued the company. We made super cool Excel spreadsheets with I don't know how many actual different sheets in that, but it was a huge financial model. The graphs were beautiful. They were really beautiful. We engaged dialogue with a couple of brokerage firms, investment bankers, who helped us raise funding, or actually they should raise funding. We ended up doing a lot of the fundraising ourselves, and we went on a roadshow to do this funding, and we generated approximately $3 million American dollars for this company. We showed the business plan, we showed the images of the prototype. People even tried eventually the prototype, but all based on the technical prototype and the business plan, which at this point was super theoretical. We used our funding, which was a lot of money, at least to us, and we made branding and promotion. We went to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the CES Fair. We got interviews. We published this YouTube video and got, I don't know, 500,000 views or something like that. But everything crashed. For the sort of trained eye, and maybe a couple of you can already spot it from this process we ran, this product never happened. It never became a market success. We never managed to introduce it to market, because all of our work was based on thoughts and hopes that this will be cool. If we build it, they will come. For some of you might have heard that expression, build it and they shall come. This was a sort of technology push innovation. We had an idea, we thought it was awesome. It was technically challenging thing to make. Cool, if we can do it, that's awesome, and we'll brag about it, and then we'll launch it into market and everybody will love it. No. So what we didn't do here, obviously, is ask ourselves, who is actually our customer? Who is it? Is this a gaming product or is it a fitness product? And the customer, what needs do they have? If we know their needs, do our product actually cover their needs effectively? If there even is a willingness to pay, what is that? And therefore, what should our price be? And ultimately, as the last point says, do we actually have any proof at all that this will be a success? So we had proved a technical prototype. The proof of concept was there. We didn't know the lifetime of this product. And when we have spent a lot of money building this and branding this and said to ourselves that, okay, now we'll approach distributors, we'll approach fitness centers, sports shops, game shops, whatever, and they'll probably all want this. Everybody said, nah, we don't want it. We wanted to see if this actually is a success. Oh, and by the way, if I'm a fitness company, isn't this a gaming product, they said? Or if it was a gaming company, sorry, but isn't this a fitness product? We don't do that. So there was huge assumptions behind our business model, behind our product, the way we thought we were going to make money, that just didn't add up. And I don't know what your perspectives are, but I thought this was a super cool and inspiring product. However, it just failed. Huge fail. Big belly flop. Nothing to even discuss there. It was like a giant mistake. All the money are gone. The company is bankrupt. There's nothing there because we did not do our innovation process right at all. So the question is, what should we have done now? What should we have done? And that's sort of the essence of what we'll talk about in this course. What is the proper best practice way to start coming up with ideas? But first and foremost, if you have an idea, taking down as much risk as possible and proving before you spend too much money, ideally before you spend any money at all, that this is an idea worth pursuing. Yeah. All right, so small caveat before we begin. This is the first course I hold for your type of audience in online. I've done a couple of courses previously, or a lot of them for leader groups. I've done some keynotes on parts of the innovation process. But in this format, and in this 4x4 hour format, on online and towards you, this is sort of a first. So at the end of this course, I will humbly ask for feedback on the course in order to be able to improve it, because this is the first time this course is held in this current form. So I really hope to get your points. Stay with me here and regard this as sort of a pilot for everything. All right. Hopefully, so far so good. It's time to start laying out some foundations. I have to double check the time schedule I'm at here, so I don't run totally out of things. Okay, nice. So we'll start now by looking at some foundations. And during this session here, we'll look at three things. Firstly, as I mentioned in the introduction, we need new tools. And these are the reasons. After that, we're going to jump into the business models and take a look at them. And then we're going to discuss some innovation principles. So starting at the top, the first point, I partly mentioned it earlier, but what my story is an example of is a huge problem. Is all over the world, startups are failing. As you know, this is no surprise. Startup is hard. It's hard to launch new products. It's hard to think in novel ways and be creative and make things that actually meet real needs that people are willing to pay for, or companies are willing to pay for. And so 80% of startups never get to a business model or level where they are scalable, and their business model is repeatable, where they generate revenue, people seem happy, and they can start to think about growth instead of product discovery. These are 4 or 5, and this is depending on which service you look at. So right now we're using one source, but yeah, a lot of sources that state that this number is in effect higher. So my claim, and not my claim, that'd be hard to claim that this is only me, but some great thinkers out there are quite clear in their message, and they have been for the last years, that the business plan is dead. We need new tools. And one of the reasons is that if you have existing products, well-established markets, where you have a known demand, you know your customers go in and out of stores, they buy products, then there's really not this much risk associated with it, is it? These are the types of businesses that already are through their startup phase. And so it makes sense for them. It makes sense for the leader groups, for the people working in the companies, to allocate time and resources doing forecasting, for instance, to write business plans, to see, okay, if we take this product that we know people like into a new market and use that as a way to grow, that is a reasonable way to run business. If Procter & Gamble, which makes a lot of different retail products or grocery products, have a new, I don't know, a high-end shaving foam, yeah, that's sort of an innovation, but it's not really early phase innovation. Shaving foam exists. They know there's a demand for shaving foam. A lot of men use it, a lot of women use it in various ways. And so, okay, they just want to see, is there a demand for a more of a high end, maybe a different design, maybe it's a bit more expensive, maybe it has a lot of
Doctor,
other.
please
Please mute.
speak because we don't speak English well.
Okay. You want me to sort of speak a bit slower, maybe?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that's valuable input. I will try to do that. Thank you. So just to repeat this point, a lot of existing products, they exist in established markets. So if Coca-Cola wants to introduce a new soda, some people call that an innovation, but they do know that people like and drink soda. It's not super risky. And so it makes sense to allocate a lot of time making business plans and making forecasting. But for new ideas, that just doesn't make sense. We don't know anything, as you just saw in the previous example, if we will succeed or if we will not at all. We don't know if people want this product, if we even can make it. And so the business plan, for those of you that know what a business plan is and have used it, use it with caution. We, where I work now, advise our customers to never write business plans until they know if the product is actually wanted and if it could be a success. So that is a super important reasons. And that means that for startups, for new companies, to actually validate their ideas and find out if it is true that this will be a success, as we'll see, that is way more important than making a documentation, making presentations, plans, documents, forecasts, whatever. So we'll look into that. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but this means that a lot of business thoughts out there, they tend to focus on the top right corner here. They are very inclined to think about, okay, how can we grow? Our product sells, is an existing service. How can we grow? And they're in what we call the exploit phase. So all companies that you see, major brands, are here in the exploit phase with their core business. But new business is here in what we call invent. We're not about growing. What we need to do is, as this say, reduce innovation risk. And we hopefully would like to take our ideas and shape them into business models that generate more money than we think, to generate more expected return. So what we will talk about in this course is in this square right here, the blue one, how to explore ideas and how to test them during this axis to reduce the risk, and then ideally also design them so that they can generate a higher return. And then once our company actually grows, then we'll move into the improved phase, but this is not scope of this course. So that's the core idea. And I also like to just take a second and saying that exploration, innovation is chaotic. It's super chaotic. So what I learned, I don't know about you, but what I learned in business school was how to do this, where things are predictable. They are not easy, but they are set. And things are, it's possible to get an overview of the situation. But when you're a startup, you want to search for new ideas and you want to de-risk them, and it's so complex, it goes all over, and therefore we need tools to actually address this, and that's what we'll look at. Yeah, okay. I'd also like to make a point, before we look into the business models, that products and services are not just products and services. So a hairdresser, for instance, is not just a hairdressing service. It is a business. The way we price it, the way we deliver it, the deals we make with the ones who deliver us shampoo and soap, whether we wash our clients' hairs or don't, whether there are certain types of hairdressing we do and not, all of this are choices in a business model context. So I'm super focused on detaching the focus on products and services, and just thinking about the products and services, and to stopping up, raising your view and looking on business models as a whole. Entrepreneurs and businessmen also tend to look too much on their product, and so they start to love their product. You remember the bike I just showed you? We loved that the bike actually tilted sideways, and we loved that we could integrate it to the virtual reality glasses, if you saw that as well. We loved that it had a front wheel that span around. But once we started talking to the customers, and when we started talking to the possible factories, we found out, oh, we don't need the virtual reality glasses. We don't need the spinning wheel. It just adds costs, and it's yeah. And so because we loved our products, we tended to focus too much on that and not too much on the business perspective. Also, we tend to overlook ecosystem and risks associated with how we actually capture value, how we price our services, how much should they cost. Maybe we can say maybe we can charge in different ways, as we'll see. As I just mentioned, we tend to emphasize the solution, to focus on the solution over the problem, and therefore we miss out on big opportunities. So my sort of encouragement to you is to don't think about just products and services. Do think about them, they're important, but also always actually think about the business models. Always do that. And so we do zoom out and look at the business model level. We become able to identify risks. We shift our focus from the solution itself, and we increase the likelihood of success. This is key to actually increase the likelihood of success for our startup, for our new idea. Please note now that I'm also assuming that we are a startup and that we have a new idea. I'm not assuming that we are an existing firm with an existing product. That's important. Okay. So hopefully you followed a bit along on the part of my points on why we need to think about business models and why we don't write business plans and why we center our focus on business models. So what are they? Well, business models, they are how your company or our company creates, captures, and delivers value, and also to whom. And it's important to remember that this is it's a simple and it's supposed to be easily understood representation of how our business functions. Actually, what type of business we are. So what our business does in order to create and deliver value, to who, to which customer, which client, and also how we monetize, how we make money on that value. And a popular tool to do that is the business model canvas. Hopefully, some of you have seen this before. It's used all over the world. And it's a super popular tool to map or design business models in a simple way. So it consists of, I'll now go ahead and explain how it works. It consists of 9 sort of building blocks. And I don't think it's super optimally designed. It's not super great design because it seems chaotic. I don't like it. Remember that we just said that a business model is how we create, capture, and deliver value. It's not intuitive that these 3 things are represented here among these 9 building blocks. So if we sort of take our 3 aspects of business models and put it on top of this, it looks like this. So you can Google this business model canvas and download it and use it. In the top right corner, you have how we actually create value. So we'll look into the individual chunks in just a minute. The green section, which is our revenues and costs, they show how we capture value, and the left side is how we deliver it. And so in the top right here, it all sort of starts here. Who is our customer? I'll show you some examples briefly, but who is our customers? You might have one type of customer segment, or you might have several. And given our customers, we also want to know in the center here, what is the value they get out of using our solution? So in the example of the bike that I showed you from my startup, what we thought we delivered was actually fun. It was engaging workouts, engaging activities. We hosted competitions so you could ride against others, you could actually compete. All the things that we think the customers value, they live here. So the value propositions, as they're called, is how we deliver, what value we deliver to our clients through our solution. And when I say solution, that could be either products or services, for instance. Now, between our customers and our solutions, there are two boxes. One is actually how we engage with our customers. What type of relationship do we offer? For instance, a hairdresser might have a super close and warm relationship with their customers. So if a guest comes in to cut their hair, maybe they'll talk to them, maybe it's repeating customers, so they'll ask them, "Oh, how are things? How are you doing? What has happened since last time?" And so that will be typically an example of a close, warm relationship. But if you're a large company, maybe you're a technological company, you can't spend resources using the warm relationship, and that's not what customer wants either. So then you might be more automized. You might just you might even not speak to them on the phone. You might just, everything is automized. You get the bills are sent out through their email. Everything is just happening, and there's really no human interaction. So that's sort of, these two are the major different directions. And now the channels, they are how we reach, but also how we deliver value to our customers. So for instance, I mentioned shaving foam and Procter & Gamble earlier. They reach their or deliver value to their customers through retail shops. We'll look at examples of everything of this. So these blue, I remind you once again, that I just spoke about are how we create value. There are customer segments, customer relationships, channels, and value propositions. But at the bottom here is, okay, how do we actually generate or capture value? Well, that's the difference between what we make, what type of money we make, and what costs that we incur. And we'll look into, there are numerous ways of making money, and we'll show you that in a bit. And to the left here is how we deliver the value. And so key activities in the top here is actually just the most important things we do to deliver value. That could be branding, that can be manufacturing, that can be distribution, could be a lot of things, but we don't want to just state all of the things that we do. There are the most important things to deliver value proposition, to deliver our value proposition. Our key resources are just, they're not our activities. There are things we own or that we have access to deliver value proposition. Maybe you have a patent to unique technology. Maybe you have access to a deal with a supplier that no one else has access to. Maybe you just know things more, you have more knowledge than others. All the key resources and activities that tend to deliver our value to our customers are here. And then to the left is our partners, because it's rare that we can deliver all of our value in a vacuum and just by ourselves. So there might be some partners that we are dependent on. So an example could be a bakery. All right. A bakery that makes bread and buns and cakes and whatnot. So to the right here, customers, if this is a local bakery, then maybe this is just the bakery has local residents as their customers, people that live in the near vicinity of the bakery, nearby the bakery. And what they make is fresh pastry and fresh bread and maybe cakes. What do I know? And so that's the customer segments, is the local residents. And what we deliver is fresh pastry and bread to them. But also, maybe this bakery, the same bakery, wants to approach businesses, local businesses. They see that, okay, Well, here we think we can make money from businesses, but businesses don't really want fresh pastry or fresh bread. They want pre-made sandwiches to serve during lunch for their employees. So another type of customer could be local businesses, and therefore you have pre-made sandwiches as well, for instance. Note also that I'm using two different colors here. I'm using yellow for the local residents and purple for the local businesses. This is good practice. So when you fill out later your own business model canvas, you can always use the color codes to see, differentiate what is delivered to the actual customer segments. But also there might be functions and aspects in the business model that are applicable to both, that both local residents and local businesses need. And I've used the color pink, doesn't matter what color, but use your own color. So maybe the channel here that they sell, that they sell fresh pastry and bread and pre-made sandwiches to the local residents and to the local businesses, they sell them through stores, just a local bakery store. And because they're local, they think that is important to be close and personal with their clients or customers. And they don't, because I've used the color pink here, it's just for the local residents and the local businesses alike. We don't differentiate them. And so the bakery, it makes money through revenue. It makes revenue through transactional sales, right? It sells one bread, it takes cash, or 5 cakes, and it takes like cash or card, but it's a payment. It's transactional. And on the cost structure, well, it has helpers, maybe cooks in the bakery or bakers that make this. Maybe they have a guy or girl in front that sells stuff, that doesn't bake but sells stuff. Okay, regardless, salaries have to be made, but they also need ingredients, and so they pay for ingredients. So those are aligned here on the cost structure. And if we look at the activities and resources and partnerships, then they, okay, of course, need to spend time baking, but they also need to market themselves, to become visible, to make sure that people in the area know about them. Those things are maybe the most important activities. They do other things as well. They do engage in talks with wholesalers and other people. They sign contracts. They clean their shops. They clean up after guests. They do all kinds of stuff. But the most important to deliver on the value proposition is probably baking and marketing. And just maybe that this particular fictitious bakery has unique recipes. It makes like a super good cake that no one else can make. Okay, that's sort of a key resource here. Their recipes, for instance, or their baker's knowledge, their chef's knowledge. And so to the left side here, because they need ingredients, they might be dependent on local farmers that deliver salad, tomatoes, cucumbers, whatever. And they might need wholesalers for flour, you know, the white powder, sugar, and whatnot. So this is just an example of a business model for a simple business, which is a bakery. Maybe actually this is a good point to ask if there are some questions regarding the business model and the business model canvas. Are you guys following me so far? Do you want to have do you want to ask a couple of questions here? Feel free to write it in the chat. Yeah, this seems basic to some. Let me know if I should paste my language or do any other alterations or delve into this. So this is just a simple, again, the business model canvas is just a simple tool to map up the most important components of your business. That's it. Nice. Okay, there are different types of business models, right? So what I spoke about was super traditional, super transactional, and a bit old-fashioned or a bit, I don't know, basic. So you do have two main types of business models. Now, these are just the one I showed you, the products and service-oriented ones. Examples can be Samsung, which sells phones and TVs and so forth. And it can be hairdressers, as we just saw, or baker. But you also have customized solutions, right? So I work as a consultant. We do a lot of the same types of products, but there's always completely new type of business, a new industry, maybe new type of products or service, whatever. We have to customize what we deliver. So these are sort of the two main transactional business models. But you do also have platform business models, as they're called. And they are either consisting of what we call two-sided platforms, also called matchmaking platforms, or multi-sided. So for instance, if some of you have heard about Etsy, or maybe you even use Etsy or sell things on Etsy, that's a platform for consumers to make stuff and sell them to other consumers. It's basically the same as a trade fair. If you've ever been to a trade fair, would you just walk into a large hall and then all people are there with their stands and they want to compete for your attention? This is an example of a two-sided platform. You meet supply with demand. You have a supply side and demand side, you meet it. Multi-sided is sort of the same, but it also includes, it's a bit more complex. It might include 3 or 4 or more sides. So eBay and Facebook, for instance, booking, at first glance, they might seem like the same I just mentioned. Like you take supply and you take demand and you meet them. Like booking.com, you have hotels or you have airlines and you sell tickets to ones that need to travel or need a place to stay at a hotel. But they also have different revenue models, and they sell to advertisers, for instance. They take money for people wanting to be more visible, for instance. Facebook, as you all know, have both content creators and content consumers, but they also have sellers that use Facebook data to target their ads. And you have different types of revenue models. I won't spend a lot of time going into these, but these are, I'm sure you have encountered several of them during your own experience. So you have like a one-for-one product. We just saw that with the bakery. You sell something which costs something, and you take more money in that you spend out. You have streaming services, for instance, that offer product for free, but in addition, they have a premium for pay version, more exclusive version of the product that sort of funds the free one. Maybe you go to a local gym, then you pay a subscription. Maybe you use the Adobe or other software that you pay a fixed monthly fee. That's the subscription model, and so forth. A lot of a very popular model being used is the base product and subscription. I mentioned the shaving gel razor is typically that. You buy a base product, which is the razor itself. You don't pay much for it, but then you need new blades. And then you swap out the blades, and basically they lock you in and you have a subscription. Yeah, and lastly, of course, you have a purely free one or ad-based, where advertisers pay for the exposure, and then it's then you as a consumer can use it free. There on the platform side, a normal one to use is like the cut or commission type. So the App Store, for instance, which also is a platform, tends to just take a cut of every dollar the app makers generate. So bear in mind that business models or business model types are one thing, and revenue models are a completely different thing. That's a part of the business model. Quick examples on that, you have the Nespresso coffee machine, which is a base product, and you have capsules that you consume. They generate money recurringly, but also when selling their machines. You have Instagram, for instance. You don't have one customer segment there, you actually have three, right? If we keep it simple, it's three: content creators, content consumers, and advertisers. And using the same color logic as earlier, you can see that, okay, the content creators, they actually get the value proposition, which is reach, visibility. They can reach out to a lot of content consumers. The consumers obviously get digital content, whereas the advertisers, which can sometimes be the content creators, they can use or generate insights. They can tap into Instagram's data and target super specifically based on behavior, and therefore increase their return on advertising spend, ROAS, return on advertising spend. So all these models are becoming increasingly popular. There are a lot of other business models that people tend to get really creative nowadays. And as you understood, in some, you have a create part, you have a capture part, and deliver. And for the curious one, you want to start always in the top right corner, creating value, and then map out the two others later. And these are also called front stage and backstage and profit formula, if you ever read that. Nice. Okay, guys. So now I've spoken a lot, and it's time to do a little exercise. For the ones that really need to sort of stretch out and have a little break, then you can do that as well. But the aim here is to do an exercise in approximately 10 minutes, which sounds like the following. And for some of you, this might be super basic. For other ones, it might be a bit of a challenge. I do this so we can bridge the gap and ensure that we're all on the same page here. So please now, using your notes, maybe you have a notepad next to you, maybe you want to use your computer, your phone, whatever. Ideally, you use this type of business model canvas and you sketch out the business model of what? Of a bus company. A company delivering bus services. And I'll set the timer at 10 minutes, which means that 1833 will go ahead and we'll take a look at the a proposed solution for that. So this is sort of the first of several exercises. So 10 minutes exercise, map the business model of a traditional bus company, a perfectly normal bus company. Okay, guys, I gave you guys a couple of minutes extra to complete the assignment. Did it go okay? For the most of you, at least. I hope it did. I'll show you now 2 points or 2 various approaches to this, not approaches, but interpretations. A bus company is sort of it's unclear, at least to me, what that might be. One take could be the following: to look at what we call a public transportation authority, or a PTA. For those of you who don't know what that is the ones that deliver the services themselves to the travelers, to the consumers. In Oslo, in Norway, we have this large PTA called Ruter. They do everything like buses and trams and whatnot. So whenever you're on a bus, their logo is on the outside and you're buying tickets with their logo on them. So that's PTAs. And so they would typically have a business model centered around travelers, right? And because they're so large scale, they'll typically have an automated customer relationship. And you can typically reach out to them as a consumer, as a traveler, or the way they communicate with their travelers is their web and an app. We could use actually the transportation vehicles themselves as a type of channel, but I've excluded that on purpose at this point. And so what do they deliver to the travelers? Well, they deliver pretty basic public transportation, probably within a set region. Some countries might have like countrywide companies, but oftentimes it's just within a set region. And probably they pay trips, the travelers pay their trips as tickets, 1 trip, 1 ticket, or maybe if you're consuming a lot of these bus services, then you might have a monthly subscription. They might have on the activity side, they might have spent a lot of time making capacity planning, ensuring that the whole city or town or region has the needed bus supply. They need to find out when the buses actually should arrive at a certain stop, which routes to take. That costs a lot of time and resources and data, of course. Then there's a question, I've seen that I've made a typo here. Then there's the question of sourcing. What should they actually do internally and what should they outsource? Maybe they spend a lot of time actually going through contracts, signing new partners, that type of stuff. And I would say that a big part of on the resource side for a company such as this, for PTA, is brand. The customers needs to like them, to trust them, to want to ride with their buses at all. But because they're so large, they typically also have a resource in terms of purchasing power. Now, I will say this with caution, because in Norway, almost all PDAs are completely public. They have operators as their partners, and I will come back to that in a second. And probably they need to have dialogue on and on with the current regional authorities in terms of responsibilities and to deliver on whatever goals that are set for them, strategic goals and so forth. And on cost structure, not surprisingly, is a lot of planning and branding and communications that drives a lot of cost. So this is PDA. Now, a completely different setup is the partners of the PDAs. So if the PDAs are the ones that you buy a ticket from, then the PTO is also known as the public transportation operator. And those are the actual companies that deliver buses. I see we got the recording on as it should be now. So the PDAs, sorry, the PTOs, the bus company, the operators, they typically have the PDAs that we just saw the business model of as their clients. They deliver services to them. So the yellow notes here is an attempt to communicate what they deliver to the PDAs specifically. And obviously, if we just look at the yellow post-its first, then it's basically bus capacity. It's ensuring that the buses in enough capacity are there where they should be on an agreed schedule. And if they're not, they're typically they're fines. In Norway, they are typically deducted from the income, but I've allocated it to the cost cell nonetheless. They're fines. So they have typically SLAs or service level agreements, as they're called, and they say you should meet with your bus there and there, and so in this way, and if you don't, then we won't pay you as much as we would like to pay you. And so their activities is obviously making a lot of tenders, which is the public contracts that you pitch your company for in a competition with others. And you need to spend a lot of time planning and syncing your route plans with the PDA to ensure that you match their needs. And of course, you run a whole park of buses, and there will be downtime. Tires will puncture, engines will, I don't know, if not fail, then they need maintenance. And so there's a lot of operative maintenance activities also there. And in terms of value proposition and customer segments, other than that, there's also the option to offer services to tour agents. Those are typically bus companies that take tourists and drive tourists around, but they're not on a schedule. And therefore, for them, you might not need to drive on a schedule, but you need to deliver bus capacity on demand. And you typically contact them and service them through phone, maybe through a web portal or web application, and so forth. So this is typically, these are typically the two common bus company business models that we have. It's super cool if you ended up using other notes and other words and other models, but that could be at least one suggestion to us to how they use how they would map their business model. All right. So given I've had a request for a break at 7:45, so my suggestion is if you guys are up for it, that we'll just stay the course. We'll speed things up and run towards 7:45 p.m. and then have a break at that point. If that is not okay, sound out, please. And if it does sound okay, I'll take your silence as approval, and I will go ahead and start talking a bit about more about business model context and sort of aspects relevant for business models. All right, seems to me this sounds fairly okay. You have to be clear with me if I shouldn't. I'm Norwegian, I can handle direct messages. Otherwise, I will just go ahead and continue. So one point I really like to make, and that I often make, is that innovation is not invention. And I think when we did the first exercise, when we started the course, when you used Menti to type in your answers and we saw all the answers on the screen, it seems to me that in large you know this, but I'd like to make the point nevertheless. So the definition of innovation, if you Google it, there are so many types of different definitions. I tend to lean on one that is often used by a guy called Anthony Ulvik, and this is just stating that innovation is just creating solutions that address unmet customer needs. That's it. So innovation can be product alterations, it can be slightly better services. Radical innovation is, of course, completely new products and services, but in essence, please regard, or my recommendation at least, is that you see innovation as creating solutions that address unmet customer needs, making the lives of customers, of private people or companies, a little or way much better. And there are some stats I would like to share with you. 8 out of 10 innovations fail. Again, depending on how you define innovation, whether you follow a company through 2 years or 1 year or 10 years or whatnot. But 8 out of 10 generally tend to fail. And most reasons, my claim is, at least, is related to business model design and validation. Typically, on the top there, according to Strategy and CB Insights, they ran out of cash. That can be super frustrating, but we have to ask ourselves, what are the reasons they ran out of cash? Didn't they raise enough, or are they working ineffectively towards creating a marketable solution? And my money I place on that. A lot of businesses tend to not work as efficiently as they should toward making it truly good product or service and functioning business model around it. And so in second place here, we have no market needs. Now, wow, that is brutal, because we never want to create a product, as I said in the introduction, without assuring there is in fact a market need, and we'll get back to how to do that. Flawed business model is mentioned on its own, but I think a lot of these, at least the blue ones, tend to be related to business model design and business model validation. Pricing and cost issues, that is super important to do early on, to do your research and ensure your timing is right, and so forth. So I think all these blue ones are basically related to business model design. So I'm happy to get started with you guys. Also, just to mention it now, there are 4 common reasons, at least according to Strategizer, why business models fail. A really common one that we see a lot is that it's solving an irrelevant customer job. That means there is something that is solved by the product or the service or the solution that the customers don't really care about. Another one is, okay, you might have a super nice value proposition that deliver genuine value to the customer, but if the business models around it don't generate more revenue than it generate costs, then it will fail. This is related to the price cost issues we saw on the previous slide. Maybe you utilize the wrong channels, maybe you rely on the wrong activities. It could be many things, but the product in itself is worth nothing if the business model around it is not adequate. The third common reason is not spotting threats in the business model environment, and we'll look into the environment in just a minute. There are business model designs that works great in isolation, but it breaks whenever it means regulations, laws, competitions, changes in demand, and whatnot. And finally, of course, poor execution is super common. If a company's physical, human, or whatever financial resources are not properly aligned, then it's liable to fail as well. So there are three things when we work with business models and early stage innovation, we want to ensure that is the case. All business models, at least the for-profit ones, they must do three things. Firstly, they must address a real need. They must be able to be delivered, and they must be profitable. And these are called desirability, feasibility, and viability. And we can just rephrase them and we can ask ourselves, okay, do the customers actually want this? And can we actually do this? This is the feasibility thing. And viability is, should we actually do this? Does it make sense to do this? For established companies, this could be, we can ask ourselves whether our current strategy speaks pro doing this. But for new businesses, it's more like, okay, can we actually earn money in a viable way going forward? And so where you want to be here in the middle there, that's called the innovation sweet spot. And we want to ensure that our business model delivers on all of these three things. And we do that through testing. And I'll show you that in a minute. As I mentioned, there's also, it also happens to be the case that no business model exists in a vacuum, as I mentioned. Either they perform or they just perish in an environment, and this environment is in most markets today, they're ever evolving. So we need to follow, keep an eye on them. There are typically four forces that are affecting any business model. They are key trends, industry forces, market forces, and macroeconomics or macroeconomics factors. So starting with the industry forces, I won't sort of delve into a lot of this in great detail, but it's important that you know of. And for the business students among you, I'm sure you've done like Porter's 5 forces and whatnot. This is basically this, supplied by the potential of collaborations also. So in short, industry forces points to anything that can reduce margins for our company. So that is typically, we're talking in terms of competition, in terms of purchasing power for the market players, but also our ability or their ability to defend themselves and build so-called moats. If moats is a word that's unfamiliar to you, that is regarded as a defensive system. And just a quick digression on that one. Medieval castles used to have like water graves around them, so it was hard to take them without being slowed down. That is an actual moat. So that's what we're talking about. All right, so industry forces is looking at your competitors, typically the companies that already exists in the industry you're contemplating on entering. The danger of having new entrants going in there, that's what we call insurgents. What both the current state, but also possibly a future state of substitute products and services, that is services that tends to do the same or create the same value as you do, just in a different way. Super important, and we'll look into that a bit later also in the course. To see also, of course, on the value chain, which suppliers and clients that have a lot of purchasing and bargaining power, that's super important. But it also entails looking at potential collaborators. Key trends, not a big surprise there. They are the most important trends that can either support our business model, make it really work and thrive and be a success, or can threaten us. We should always look for in terms of timing. Remember, timing is a huge issue when or a large reason companies are failing or innovation is failing. We want to keep an eye on what the key trends are, and we typically want to map those in 4 ways. One is in terms of the current technological trends and what voids and opportunities those create. Secondly, regulatory trends. Don't just have to be trends though in terms of regulations. It could be the assays, actual laws and regulations that either enable us or create a void in the market for us to use. And we also want to see if there are any changing societal or cultural trends. For instance, in Norway, the population is really, really aging. So we can see on a macro level, the population is getting older. So within X years, then we know, for instance, that we have a different type of demographics in the population. We've seen the last years that people tend to be more and more focused on themselves and their own well-being and so forth, and that might also be another trend we'll look into and so forth. So thirdly, market forces. They are more on the market sides, threats and opportunities in terms of customer and customer landscape. So we can look at market issues, various types of issues that might hamper or impede the attractiveness of a typical market. We might look at various market segments. Some customer segments might be super more attractive than others and have a much higher willingness to pay, for instance. Needs and demands. What are the different segments' needs, for instance? We want to see if there are any switching cost mechanisms there. Now, switching costs are just friction that makes it either hard or easy to get rid of a product or service that a customer is currently using. So if I'm using, for instance, my iPhone, my phone, I think it's because I really appreciate the design of the phone, and I appreciate first and foremost the way it interacts with me and the way it functions. Samsung is going to have a hard time making me switch operating system, because it means I have to think about the way I use my phone. I have to relearn it. Maybe I'm not used. There's a lot of friction in making the move. So for me, or Apple has succeeded in creating some switching costs for me to change phone provider, and so forth. We can also see what the current state in the markets are, and we can think about it when we create our business model. How can we actually create switching costs and create lock-in effects for our products? And the last is revenue attractiveness, which we'll come back to, but it's also related to customer needs and demands and more of the structure parts of the markets. In terms of macroeconomics, which is the fourth and last of these 4 factors in the environment around our business model, I tend to pay attention to this factor, but I don't use a lot of time when I discuss ideas with clients or I think about ideas on my own. I just want to know about them. I know now, for instance, that actually raising capital in Norway because of the market turbulences is hard. So if I today am to pursue a business or a new venture, I maybe want to focus on the ideas in my backlog that are not as capital intensive as others, that maybe not I need to raise so much money to get going with and validating. And yeah, so it's worth noting. I know that some companies have used this to their advantage, because also the interests now is in AI. It used to be like some couple of years ago, it was like all about blockchain and cryptocurrency. And if you had cryptocurrency in your business pitch, then investors threw money at you. Now I know Bitcoin or crypto companies that actually are looking for ways to leverage AI technology just so they can say that to investors and generate more revenue. So it might be productive to be aware of that as well. And of course, if it's the interest rates are high and increasing, people tend to spend less. Maybe that will make it hard for you to establish as a new company and so forth. So I won't go into the depths of this or exemplify them anymore. You will get this in the content that will be shared with you. And let me see if we have the time to do this exercise. Hold your horses for 1 second here before we jump into it. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's fair. We can spend 5 minutes now, actually, just to get our juices flowing and our thoughts going. Please spend 5 minutes and ask yourself, can you think of any business that are either threatened by or maybe have a huge opportunity because of its external factors right now? And those factors can be on the right side here. Those are just the points I mentioned. So feel free to be semi-creative, semi-analytical, and think about, okay, what types of businesses are, as of this point, in your local region, typically threatened, or maybe they have a large opportunity because of the external factors. Let's start again at 1907. All right, 1907 it is. I hope your thoughts, your thought exercises went well. I think there was a super cool comment or answer or suggestion that came in the chat from Alma, which states that technology and digital services could be thriving in Palestine as e-commerce is becoming more and more popular, given the fact that people are not able to move around as much. So in terms of needs and demands, in terms of societal and cultural trends or events, maybe, if we see like large changes in behavioral patterns, then that might be super cool to look at. So I thought that was a cool reflection, and if that is indeed the case, that people are not able to move around as much, then e-commerce seems to be or services circling around home delivery and that type of stuff is super cool. Telemedicine is mentioned as an explicit example. So that's super cool. So this exercise was just to get your thoughts going. We want to sort of always have these points unconsciously in the back of our head and just have them stay there. It allows us to make better decisions. But once the time is right, we also want to sort of pull our sleeves up and look more into data and using this and as part of the test process. And I'll come back to that later. But as for now, thanks for your work and suggestions. We're now more than ready, I think, to jump into the final part of the foundations, which is the innovation principles. And I won't spend a lot of time with it, but I will dwell with some of the principles that are key. I'll let your eyes rest on this for a second, and I will follow up in a couple of seconds. Okay. So this is a quote from Alexander Osterwalder, which is one of the sort of large thinkers within the innovation field. He runs a company called Strategizer that you might have heard of, and is the creator of the business model Canvas that we saw earlier. And he says that an entrepreneur's main job is to systematically reduce risk and uncertainty of new business ideas. And ideally to do so before you invest and scale. And I think that's a super nice and important quote. If you have an idea, you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, maybe you have a company that wants to think about new concepts and new solutions, then your main job as your main responsibility, almost your core job, is to reduce risk and uncertainty as fast as possible, as effectively as possible before you invest big. That is your responsibility. If you're a CEO, we saw that in the introduction, then that is your responsibility because you have shareholders. If you are on your own, then that is your responsibility towards yourself because you ultimately want to succeed. So the question is, how do we do that? And there are 6 core principles I think effective innovation relies on. And I'll go into them one by one, but in an overview, they look like this. Firstly, you need to decouple yourself from the solution. You need to love the problem. And secondly, you need to be truly what we call need-centric. That means focus on the value that people or companies want. It's super easy to be to not take them seriously or not focus enough on them, but that is key. Then one of my personal favorites, assume nothing without testing it. It's so normal to just think that, oh wow, this idea is great, and I will make a business plan and I will just put it in a document how I'm going to succeed, and then everything's going to turn out, then you have assumed a lot. You don't want to assume anything without testing it. And once you have some assumptions you want to test those assumptions effectively. So that's the fourth core principle. Also, please, people are very different. Some people are just all over the place, aren't afraid of failing. They do stuff, they tumble, they get back on their feet, and that's all cool with them. A lot of other people find failing really, really, really painful. That is way outside their comfort zone. And that is a shame, because failing is a prerequisite of effective innovation. So you need to embrace failing. You think about failing as really, really awesome. It's a win if you fail, basically, as long as you learn from it. We'll get back to that as well. And also do some research, plan stuff, but don't get stuck. Depending on how you work, you can be trapped in what we call analysis paralysis, and that means that you just can't stop analyzing stuff. I am the way my personality functions, I tend to easily go into that trap. So I need to constantly try to avoid that. So let's start with the first one. And bear with me, people. There will be some text here. You will get this later. These slides and the text. So you have to excuse the text heaviness of these slides. But these principles are really important. So I'm super grateful and happy if you manage to take them in and take them with you. The first principle, love the problem, not the solution, is about that you want to understand what problem should be solved. Unsuccessful entrepreneurs, they fall in love with their solutions. So in the case with me, with the bike, the smart bike with the video I showed you, we fell in love with it. We thought it was super cool, super innovative, super awesome. But we didn't ask ourselves, what is the actual problem we're solving here and for who? So that was one of the biggest mistakes we made. The product itself, as you remembered, it tilted sideways, it went up and down. So what was the actual problem it solved, right? Maybe some entertainment aspect. Was the actual tilt of the bike needed to give people that entertainment aspect? I don't know. If it wasn't, then we'd have so much more expensive product than we needed to have. So try to avoid that. Another point here is that resilience is good. It's really, really good, but stubbornness is bad. So it's important as an entrepreneur to have true grit. That means you have a will to work, you have a will to fight, you have a will to endure. But if you tend to lock in on this one idea that this one thing will be the best thing ever, and you're not open to things, insights that come from the data and maybe make alterations, then you might be trapped. So founders who are able to, as the term says, kill their darlings, kill their ideas, and pivot and make changes, they are far more successful than others. The second principle is being truly need-centric, and that means that there's no larger sort of drivers behind the success of a business model than actually being able to identify and delivering on a genuine need of a client or potential customer. If the market is big enough, and you really have identified an untapped and an unmet need, then you will be successful unless something really, really weird happens. And this means for a lot of us, myself included, you need to avoid your own biases and need to understand the contextual needs of the customers. That means the situation they are in, who they are, why they care about stuff, and so forth. And a good quote that I should have highlighted out in blue here is that customers don't buy products or services actually, or they do, but there's a way to look at it that says they don't. What they actually buy is better versions of themselves, and I think that's partly true. So keep that in mind. What are those better versions of themselves? What do they want to achieve? And we have a whole section on jobs to be done, which is super important, and we'll cover that later in the course. And a final point here, and we'll revisit this later as well. This is, I think, branding or marketing was mentioned in the introduction when we had all the bubbles with people suggesting what they wanted to learn. This is super key for marketing in essence. So if you have a product and you think there's an interest for it and you want to push it, there are so many companies saying, hey, look what our product can do. You never want to say that. You say, this is what you can achieve with our product. There's a huge difference. There are so many companies, when you go into a lot of websites, suddenly there's a new, I don't know, AI portal for whatever, and they spend the whole website talking about, oh, we have the most advanced this, and we use this and this technology, so we're so advanced, blah, 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 blah. And you sit there as a visitor on the website and you're just like, yeah, cool. But what does that mean for me? What do you do? So keep that in mind for later. We'll revisit it, so revisit that as well. This was the point I mentioned. Assume nothing without testing it. I won't spend a lot of time on this because we will look into it sooner or later. But note that not having any tests, the risk will increase over time. Using testing, we will actually decrease the risk over time, and by that also create value for ourselves and our shareholders. Another thing is that we want to test assumptions effectively. That means you have a responsibility to reduce risk as fast and cheaply as possible. You want to choose the type of experiments and the type of work that actually pulls this red light, this red line down. So if it tends to skew like this, you need to see in every way what can you do to actually make it bend more and more like this. And the green one, I added also to mention that you don't want to use a lot of spending, as we've said early on. You want to construct tests that are as cheap as possible. And then over time, because more expensive insights often gives more insights, then you can increase spending. And we'll look into that. This one, I'll just quickly reiterate it. Please put all your pride aside, dare to fail. When you're an entrepreneur, your job is not to look good. Your job as an entrepreneur is not to seem smart or to appear successful. Your job is to learn and to be super, super focused on de-risking. That is it. And so you want to try and you want to try again. And success is often driven by, of course, by the number of times you attempt things, right? Because you cannot make alterations, you can make adjustments based on what you're learning. And statistically, we see that second or third time founders are way more likely to succeed compared to first time founders. And I have sort of an image on this because it's a paradox, right? If you imagine you were a soccer player or you wanted to become a soccer player, you weren't any good with the ball, you wanted to learn how to get the ball into the upper corner of the goal, right? You didn't have any skills yet, you didn't really know. Okay, so what does a kid do? What would a person, a human being do? Well, they would take the ball out on the field and they would practice. They would try again and again and again and again, and eventually they would become better. However, in the business world or the grown-up world, so to speak, we tend to not do that. We tend to think, okay, let's find out, I don't know, mathematically or theoretically how we could do this. We'll make documents with plans, okay, writing out how we would take the ball to the field. If you guys follow along, don't don't go into that trap. Think that, okay, startup ventures are hard. Just like learning soccer, we need to practice and actually do things again and again. That's the whole notion. So there's a huge fallacy or flaw in thinking there. I think a lot of industries and out there are suffering from. And finally, please plan, but avoid being stuck there. So the American General Eisenhower said that, okay, plans are nothing, but planning is everything. And I think that's a good point. Because you can make a plan and things will change. But if you didn't plan at all, if you didn't have any research done at all, if you didn't actually look things into things up front, then of course it would be of little use. So in the startup context or the innovation context, plan means do your preliminary research, have educated guesses on things, and of course don't be an idiot or a fool. And follow the steps you're going to learn in this course, but don't just sit by your desktop and make a fictional business plan, and don't get so hung up on your analysis that you don't get going. So get out of your building and get your hands dirty. That's the final principle. And if you follow these 6 principles using the methods we'll go into now, I think you will have a much larger likelihood of succeeding. So yeah, okay. We're now 20 minutes prior to the pause. Please give me a sign now. Are you guys hanging in so far? Should we now do like a quick couple of minutes technical break, or are you good and we'll push through and then take a break at 19:45 or 7:45? What do you guys think? Preferably the faculty members or course responsibles. What do you think?
I think we can move on. Vemund.
Okay, let's move on. I'll position myself towards 9:45 then. Okay, so I see there's some suggested tools also here in the chat. We'll come into those later in the course. Let's jump into the actual innovation method we want to use. And this part of the course is structured in 3. So I'll first give an overview of the steps we're going to follow, and then we'll jump into each step and have some exercises as well before we round up and have a Q&A. So the thing is, today I will show you the entire model, all of the steps, but as of today, we will only jump into the 2 first of the 6 steps, and I'll come back to that, but I mentioned it in the agenda slide as well. So this is a highly recommended model for using for validating coming up with and validating your business concepts. So this is, regard this please as sort of our engine. So it all starts off with an idea, almost always does. And depending on your position and what you know beforehand, there is almost always a good reason to do some just preliminary insights, some early stage insights into understanding, okay, what do we actually, is this actually something worth pursuing? If it is, then we gather some information and we sketch out the idea, typically into business models. And already there, you can see that one idea can turn into 50 different business models, the same idea. And then we have to make a choice in terms of which business models to focus on and bring with us into this blue loop here. And we'll test that business model in the following way. We'll first surface assumptions, and that will ask what would have to be true. So for the ones of you that know design thinking, I can see that that is something, it's written in the chat. If you know design thinking, you know that how might we, And what would have to be true are the two key questions following that process. We'll prioritize those assumptions. We will test them, starting with the most important, and we will then evaluate and see whether we had some learning. And maybe we'll need to reiterate and continue with the test, or maybe we can jump on and refine the idea. Maybe enrich it, maybe swap it out with another one, make a pivot or whatnot. So this is the model we follow, and as you can see, and as I mentioned in the introductory steps, you always have a choice here at these green dots to refine it, to pivot, to kill, or even launch it if you're at a stage where you have enough data to see that this is something worth pursuing. This is the same process now, just visualized differently, right? Same steps: idea, insight, sketch, assumptions, test, evaluate, just the same. And again, the red lines or the red colors are the design phases, and the blue colors are the validation phases. And starting with the first step, just to briefly explain it before we jump into it. Then you typically want to generate, maybe you have an idea. If you don't, you want to generate a lot of ideas. You want to prioritize them, and then you want to choose the most promising idea, right? You take it and you typically want to gather some initial insights, like what problems do we really solve? Who would benefit perhaps the most from solving these problems? Given those people, is that in fact a problem they have, or do they have other problems that we should prioritize instead? And also a nice thing to find out is, how do they solve these problems today? So a tip here is to map out what they do both before and during and after consumptions or usage of our products and service. We'll come back to that as well. When we do have some insights or some ideas that we might refine our idea on top of, we want to sketch out the and see what directions we can take the idea in. So we want to sketch business models, and then we want to choose one. So just let me say that once again, that when I talk about ideas here, I'm not talking about business models. But here in the sketching phase, top right, point 3, then we want to make business models sketches, and then choose one of those and bring it into the validation phase. So, and also keep in mind, the ones of you who also worked on similar projects earlier, or have looked at these types of challenges earlier, you know that a higher quantity gives better end results. So you want to come up with as many business models as possible before narrowing them down, because a higher volume gives better quality. So in this case, quantity actually is quality. Okay, so at this point, we've sketched a bit and chosen a business model, and now we want to identify and prioritize risky assumptions. And we typically ask ourselves, as I mentioned, what would have to be true for our business models to be a success? And these assumptions will always fall into at least one of the 3 categories: desirability, viability, and feasibility. I do know that some of you might want to look at also business models that are sustainable, for instance. Then there is a 4th category, but I won't cover that in this course. But there's a 4th category called sustainability. And some people even like to use the environment around the business model as a category on its own, which is called adaptability, and that's the 5th one. But personally, I like to use the part of the environment as part of the viability and desirability components. So I think that's more simple and more concise, but we'll look into that as well. Once we have surfaced and prioritized our assumptions, we'll jump into the testing, and we'll run those tests, and we'll capture learning before we evaluate what to do. Okay, so that's our process. Now this, as the gray text states, is our engine. I'll reiterate on that, but that is what brings us sort of forward. Now, I mentioned also that what we want to pass are some milestones. And this is the innovation milestone. So what we want to achieve is this. Firstly, during the business model design and validation phase, which is what we'll cover in this course, we want to make sure that we have a proper customer problem fit. That is always the first step. And that means, what does that mean to have a customer problem fit? Yeah, well, that means that we know who our target customer group is. We have selected a customer group, and we have actually verified what that means. We have proven that they need, they have a true problem. Okay, so at this point, we're not sure about anything when it comes to solutions or business models or whatnot. The only thing we want to have ensured is that we know who the customer is and that they in fact have a problem and what that problem is. Once that is done, then we will see, okay, given that customer and given that problem, what is the best solution to that problem that will solve it the most effectively and reasonably. So when we achieve the so-called problem solution fit, we know what our solution covered. We know that our solution covers the customer's needs effectively. And once we have that, then we want to make sure that we actually know how to communicate our solution. And there are always several ways to say, hey, we have this product, you want to buy it? Some ways to say that is more effective than others, and that is typically uncovered through testing. So having achieved the solution message fit, we then know how to communicate our value proposition to our targets group in the most effective manner as we can. And this is not straightforward. It's hard, and you're going to jump back and forth through various testing, and you're going to scratch your head a lot. But this is always the sequence. Customer problem fit, problem solution fit, solution message fit. And then lastly, the whole sort of the holy grail that we want to get to is the product market fit. And that just means that we've proven that there is a market interest in our solution, and our solution is actually capable of satisfying that market. So at this point, we're some months down the road, and we have traction, right? So we have sales, we have demonstrated the repeatability and the scalability of the business model, and the focus of the business now shifts to growth. So remember the drawing with the chaos in the beginning and the straight line at the end? We're now approaching that phase. And some startups, they tend to see the need for bringing in other types of leaders, other types of resource personnel at this point, because it's a whole different ball game to get something to grow than it is to actually manage the chaos and validate user needs and create good solutions in the first step. But of course, a lot of startups succeed also with the same management. So, but that's the reason that is differently colored from the other milestones, is that we won't tackle the product market fit, but we will ensure that we have a good foundation for the product market fit through these other steps. All right, so we'll just close the window. Summing the two systems together, we now have an engine, we have the process, but we also have the milestones we want to pass, right? So we want to use our innovation engine to reach each of the innovation milestone in sequence, like first customer problem fit, then problem solution fit, then solution message fit. And this slide, this way of showing things will follow us throughout the course. All right, a bit under 10 minutes to our break. I'll jump right into the first step. Now we are in the section now where we'll go into each step and see examples of how we do things and see best practices. So there are 3 false myths about business ideas. I just want to emphasize that. So some people say, or you might read somewhere, maybe you've heard already that, okay, somebody says, if something similar is out there already, you probably won't succeed. Then the market is already saturated, the products are already there, you can't really compete with it. You're a startup, you don't have resources, forget about it. If you are to succeed, then it cannot exist already. That is basically what they're saying, right? And then you have another statement, which is also a myth, and says, okay, if the idea is good enough, somebody would have done it yet. So because it's not already out there, then it's probably not worth pursuing. If you see those two statements together and you respect both of them, then nothing new would ever be made, right? Because if it's not there, if it is out there, then we won't make it. And if it's not out there, then we shouldn't make it. Nothing would happen. So don't take these at face value. And the last myths are is that the market needs to be huge for any idea to be successful. That's just incorrect. The market does not need to be huge for any idea to be successful. One of the most successful ventures the past years in Norway is called Askeladden. And all they do is travel around the world and they see which business models tend to prosper in other countries. They don't even innovate themselves. They take the ideas back home and test if it could work in Norway. And they always look at markets that are not professionalized. So the largest markets, like groceries, for instance, grocery retail, which is huge, that is a super professional market. These are huge players, and they just, nope, not going to do that. But hairdressers, which tend to be a market which is quite fragmented with a lot of small players and not a lot of professional chains, yeah, we'll do that. We'll disrupt that. So all of these myths, I wholeheartedly think that you should, whenever they're thrown at you, just let them bounce off. They're just bullshit. They don't make sense, actually. Following on with ideas, as we're in the idea step. Ideas can come from many places, and some common ones are these, okay? These are based on points made by Ash Mariah. He's a guy who's written a book called Running Lean. Smart guy, a lot of interesting thoughts. Check him out. But one of the innovations he's mentioning is called scratch your own itch innovations, right? It just means that you encounter a problem, you have an experience yourself, and you think, wait a minute, I didn't like this. This could be done better. This has to be done better. I want to do something about it, right? That's a lot of innovation stems from the scratch your own itch phase, and be careful not to assume that the problem is worth solving, because just because you have the problem doesn't mean there's a large enough market that has the problem. But it's worth noting that some ideas actually turn out successful from this, or a lot of ideas turn out successful from this type of innovation. Another one is accidental discovery. And of course, there's been a lot of accidental discoveries in the science world throughout history, but it also happens in the business world, right? You just encounter an unexpected outcome. Could be a failure, could be a success, and then you decide to explore it further. So be aware here that breakthrough hidden in failure is often missed because failure is uncomfortable, and the immediate reaction often is to just say, whoa, okay, shit, I don't want to have anything to do with this, right? I just mentioned Askeladden, which travels around the world looking at other concepts in other more developed markets than Norway. Norway is quite small. There's not a lot going on here. We don't tend to be the most innovative, and so if we go to the US or to Japan and Tokyo, then suddenly you can find completely new types of concepts that is worth checking out and maybe taking back home. So these are called analogs, right? Just means you find a successful idea that works in a different setting, maybe different geography, and you decide to localize it. But it's not given that the idea will work in your context. So you have to do some research and testing on that as well. So that's the caution. Of course, you have customers' requests. They might ask for new features, capabilities. If you already run a company and want to see what types of innovation you can do in your products, then of course lean towards what customers say. And finally, or not finally, but the ones we're going to look at least today is also called external changes. And that just means there's an ongoing shift in an industry. We see some changing behavior, maybe something is happening in the markets. Maybe a huge player is going bankrupt, suddenly starting a massive attraction of industry players. Then you might decide to exploit that. Yeah, so I think those are the most important ones. So the question is, though, a lot of you might have ideas on the table already, but a question is, what if you don't have an idea? What do? You don't feel particularly creative right now. You just want to come up with the new ideas. There are several ways, but I mentioned earlier that you probably want to generate, prioritize, and then choose, right? And remember, the more ideas you have, the better. So what we're going to do next is that we're actually going to use ChatGPT to help us a bit, coming up with some ideas. I'll show you how that works in a minute. I see now that it's 7:44, so my suggestion is that we take a break now. And for how long do you want to take the break, Mr. Jalal?
Maybe for 10 minutes is okay.
Sorry?
10 minutes, Raymond.
10 minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. See you back here 5 to 8. Have a great break.
Okay, see you.
All right, guys. Are you back? Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you, Vemund.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have just spoken about the importance of having a large number of ideas, and that what to do if you don't maybe have an idea already, although things tend to start with an idea, and then of course you can generate them in numerous ways. And one idea I like to recommend is using the ever increasingly interesting tools in the AI world. I'll keep it super simple at this point because I think ChatGPT up until this point has tended to be the most preferred sort of weapon of choice or most commonly acceptable tool out there. So what I'll now do is just show you a couple of thoughts about how one can easily, low-key generate a lot of ideas and assess them. And one thing, of course, is to if you don't want to create a brainstorming, have a creative brainstorming session with your friends and family, you can use AI. So one example prompt could be something like this. I'm interested in technology and sustainability and have a budget of so and so money. What are some business ideas I should explore? And then assess, are any of these promising? So if I quickly show you what that interface might look like. This is ChatGPT. If you don't have a subscription or access to a free version of it already, I highly recommend you sign up and get that. There's a vast array of opportunities or use cases you can use it with. And also, I think it's important to sort of have your finger on the pulse in this AI realm, because as so many others, I think that these tools will potentially shape the way we work and interact immensely. And so not paying attention and not following along would also be super unfortunate. So nevertheless, this is a tool made by OpenAI, widely accessible. You probably have heard about it. And one way we can use it is writing, as I just did, something like, I am interested in technology and home services. I have a budget of $10,000. What are some business ideas I could pursue? And this is the 4.0 version, so it typically relatively quickly suggests a bunch of ideas. Let's just have a quick look at them. Smart home installation services, voice controlled assistants, lighting, thermostats. Yeah, I heard of those before. Home network setup and security, boring home innovation consulting, tech support for home devices, let me see. You can prompt it again based on the ideas it actually gives. There are two things you should be aware of here. One is that as it goes along through the conversation, it tends to get a bit stuck. It tends to lean on what it has previously said. So if you need to start fresh, then I would typically go up and alter the message itself rather than continuously prompting, because it narrows down statistically as you go. So I typically now want to say, okay, let's see, I'm interested in home services, or let's see, technology and sustainability. And I'll resend it, and it will sort of start from scratch and then send me some suggestions. So as it suggests these things, it just proactively states what it is, why it has a value, and then suggests also a budget breakdown. I don't really pay attention to that because it's often a lot of bullshit, but I can do something now to make it sort of to further reason with it. So if we jump back to a slide here, we can assess, okay, are any of these ideas promising? If they are, cool, then let's double down on those who are. If they aren't, let's prompt it again or ask it to generate a new list. And once that is done, we typically want to see, okay, assuming that we now have a list of okay, fairly attractive ideas, we want to prioritize this list, right? And so we want to define some prioritization criteria. So one way is to actually remember that, okay, business models that are successful, they tend to address a real need, they tend to be profitable, and they tend, of course, to be able to be delivered in an efficient manner. But looking at the top two there, the desirability criteria and the viability criteria, we can use those to deduct some prioritization criteria, and that is the number of customers that should be fairly large. They should have a problem that occurs fairly frequently, and they should have also the level of pain that occurs whenever the problem actually occurs should also be relatively high. So what I would do is to use a prompt something like this. Okay, rank your suggested ideas according to, and then we have a list. We state which customer problems the idea tends to solve, and who has those problems. I ask you to actually use text comments and not any numbers there. I secondly ask how many that have the problem, how often the problem occurs, how high the customer pain is, and I ask it to present it in the table. And add both a column with the sum score. I'm getting technical here, but we'll see it all in a minute. And a column with the reason for its actual scoring. And I'll just ask you to use numbers from 1, which is a low score, to 10, which is a high score, and then range the table. So I'm gonna actually use the text from this prompt directly. Reshare my screen and jump back into my browser. So assuming now we have a list, this could be a list of like 100 ideas, right? It's just 6 now. But let's just use this list as of now, paste in our text, and then see what it actually states. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we ask it to present it in a table and add a column for the sum of the score and so forth. And so it quite quickly generates a table for me, which can be useful, maybe not useful, but I tend to like that it actually explains now quite quickly what the customer problem is and who it is. So it states about the solar panel installation services, and it states that this homeowners and businesses that want to reduce energy costs and their carbon footprint. Okay, so that tells me a bit about what their actual needs are, and I would need I won't accept this at face value, right? So these are just statistical suggestions made by ChatGPT. So I would want to like find out, okay, maybe this sounds interesting. How many homeowners and businesses actually have a need or want to reduce their carbon footprint? Maybe they don't need to or want to, but maybe they have, for branding issues, just want to because sustainability and climate is super hot now. Regardless, I would use this to conduct the test, right? And what I've gotten it to do, other than state these things in its own column, is score on how many people have this problem, right? So remember, 10 was high. So the columns are, okay, quite a lot of people would have the problem with the solar panel installation system. I don't buy that. I don't think that's correct that 8 out of 10 people actually need solar panels on their roofs or would have that something they care about. And I really don't believe that the customer pain level is 10, that this is something they just cannot wait fixing. So be aware of of bullshit, right? ChatGPT tends to partly give you factual and quite good information, and partially just a bunch of So I would like to suggest using this type of process where you first ask it to generate a lot of ideas. Maybe you could prompt it to even suggest much more novel ideas. I have heard about most of these before. Make sure to suggest ideas that are formed on customer needs that are actually met. And I will ask it actually to use its training data to do this. Now, its training data is just static data that this model was used to be built upon, but I will show in a second, we can actually use it, have it to do research for us. Use your training data. And here we go again. So certain, okay. The first one is quite interesting, AI-powered carbon footprint tracker. Suddenly there's a lot of small businesses now that, from a branding perspective, want to appear, of course, attractive. Maybe they are actually socially or environmentally conscious. But it's not in European countries. We're not really far from coming to a point where EU regulations would force all companies to actually track their own footprint and report on it, just like a financial P&L sheet. So this could, if this is technically viable and it won't cost us a lot, that's a cool idea we could pursue, right? And we can nudge it further to ask, okay, what are the actual needs and regulations and whatnot? So without jumping into that rabbit hole right now, I just wanted to show you, okay, that this is actually a sequence we can use to get it to stack rank the ideas, and we can then test, is that in fact correct? Is it many people that have this problem? If it is, then okay, cool. Let's maybe check that idea out and sketch it out to become a business model. And to choose among these, we will inevitably need to play around, as I just did with the list, ask for more ideas, tweaks, and so forth. My experience is that once it generates a lot of ideas, I tend to get my own ideas as well. So I use it as a creative sparring partner. I never trust it. I never think that what it says is actually true before factually checking it. And I tend to use it as an assistant. Okay, cool. Then generate multiple more ideas, sort them like this. Remove the ones that aren't compliant with this regulation. If you do remove them, give me reasons as to why you did, so I can check if it's true that the ones. So I sort of use it both as an assistant and as a creative sparring partner, and in that manner, I find it quite effective. So this could be a powerful tool to just come up with ideas. And remember, we're at a point now in our innovation process that we don't need to find like, okay, wow, the idea. We just want to find something we think is interesting and promising, and we want to bring further into our innovation engine, so to speak, to elaborate on and test on and see if there's anything there. Yeah, I think I've covered the other bullets on this slide. Okay, so I think we will jump forward to the. I suggest, as I said, that all of you, or the ones that don't have a profile with OpenAI, do so and then test this tool and try to use it. Okay, given that we assume now that we have an idea that we think is interesting, whether you came up with it yourself, whether we use the AI sustainability tracker or footprint tracker that we just found in GPT, we now sort of go into the insights phase, right? We found an idea, we have prioritized it, we have done some quantitative and also qualitative just selection of the idea. And now is the first time that we actually want to see, okay, is it something here? Do we think this is actually worth spending an hour or half an hour designing or sketching a lot of business model around, or just don't we want to waste another minute with this idea, right? We're working super fast now, and this is some of the idea. So as we approach now the insights part, the second step in our innovation process, I'd like to show you one quote that I think is quite good. It's again from Ash Mariah. Life is really too short to build something that nobody wants, right? I've spent some time up until this point talking about the importance of user needs. If you remember this figure and the innovation sweet spot, we want to make sure that we build something that people actually want, then that we actually can deliver and we actually should deliver in terms of profitability. But often the highest risk in innovation is whether there is a real market need or not, right? Remember the statistics I showed you? So desirability is something each and every entrepreneur or innovator should have in their toolbox or skill set. And to validate desirability, we need to understand who our customer is and what their needs are and how our solution can meet those needs. So we have just done tip of the iceberg, super fast, like draft in ChatGPT. But I would like to show you that in the business model canvas, which you're now familiar with, there tend to be two tools that reside within two of the cells. And that is the customer profile, also known as the circle, and this is the value map, also known as the square. And together, the circle and the square, they make out the value proposition canvas, which was mentioned in the chat from one of you guys earlier. And it looks like this. And again, on the right side, we have the customer. It's all about the customer, right? So if we think we know who our customer is, we want to understand what do they want to achieve. This is known as their customer jobs. What's their gains and pains? I'll come back to what that is in a minute. And when we have that mapped, then we should have really good knowledge about our customer, and we should have really laid a good foundation as to what value we need to create through our solution and value proposition. And that is the left side, that is the square. That's what we're going to create. And we want those to be linked. We want to create products and solutions that map out super effectively, meet some of the needs, not all of them, just some, the most important needs of the customer. So again, the right, that is the needs, that is the circle, the square is the solution, okay? So what value should be created, and therefore how should our solution be designed? So if we zoom in on the right side here, we can see that we allocate some colors to the different fields, okay? So dark blue is customer jobs and so forth. Customer jobs are what the customer is trying to get done, okay? These are tasks they're trying to complete, maybe problems they're trying to solve, something they want to satisfy. So in the quote where we said that we don't that customers don't buy products, they buy a better version of themselves. These are the aspects they actually want to achieve using our products. And I'll come back to the term jobs in a minute because it's a bit weird, but it's super common, and once you nail that, you'll be much more efficient as an innovator. The pains at the bottom here, the purple ones, they are factors that stop or hinder or make it difficult for the customer to achieve their jobs. So these things, they are like spikes on the ground or trees in the road, anything that stops the customer from getting to this point. Okay, and gains, it's not just the flip side of pains, just with a positive term. These are the benefits that the customer both sometimes expect, but also desires and maybe even would be surprised by. Okay, so that could be functional, that could be social gains. Maybe they will get more popular, or they be more happy, or they'll save more money, or whatever. But those are the benefits. And if we use the same colors and just pull ourselves towards the left side of the value proposition canvas, we have the products and services. That is our solution. Okay, which product do we actually offer to help the customer get a functional, social, or emotional job done, or help them satisfy wants and needs? Whereas the pain relievers, just as the term actually says, that describes how our product eliminates or reduces their pains. That could be negative emotions. They could be reducing undesired costs, making things more cheap for them. Could be removing situations from occurring altogether, reducing risk, whatever. Where the gain creators are what meets their gains, right? The benefits that comes from achieving those jobs and things that might be there, they might be surprised by. So this is a super important tool to know, and it will be a good friend of yours if you want to get your hands dirty and work thorough with innovation. And I tend to not be too thrilled about using set sequences or rules, but often the value proposition is completed in a certain sequence. I recommend just always starting with to the right here, with given a customer, what is their actual jobs? What do they want to achieve? And then going from there to pains, gains, pain relievers, gain creators, and then ultimately, okay, given that we need to address pain and we need to address gain creators, what should we do? Sometimes it will look more messy than this. We might go straight from customer jobs and selecting one of those, maybe listing up some pains or uncovering some pains, and then driving a hypothesis for product before we iterate on and asking ourselves, okay, given that we make our product this way, what gains will we create? What pains will we relieve? And so forth. So to the right, again, start with one, understanding customer jobs. But what is this customer job term? Where does it come from? What is it? What's the deal? It sounds weird. So the actual term is jobs to be done. And I cannot state wholeheartedly or strongly enough the importance of this term. If you truly understand what jobs to be done are and how you should work with it, then that would be super duper to have in your tool set as an entrepreneur. So jobs to be done is just a perspective, right? It's just a perspective on that says that customers tend to hire a product or hire a service, quote unquote, to get a job done. Okay. And as a consequence, we should never focus on the product itself, as I've said a couple of times, but what the product enables the user to achieve. And a super famous quote by a professor, Theodore Lewitt at Harvard Business School. People don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They don't care about the drill. They just want a 1/4-inch hole in their wall. That is it. And that's often used as a description of the jobs to be done perspective, because it's quite covering, right? That is the case. They don't want to buy the drill to do the job, to stand there and find out how to mount the drill, to actually drill the hole and to actually remove the dust. They just want the hole in the wall. And you can actually, like some of you might notice, you can go even further. You can say they might not just want this 1/4-inch hole in their wall. What they want is a shelf or a picture. They want to hang a picture on their wall. They don't want to drill, they don't want a hole, they want a picture on the wall. And you can continue like that, right? Until you reach a point where you say, okay, why do they want a picture on their wall? Well, to be well liked. When people get into their home, they feel that this is a likable person. And ultimately, you always end up with something like, okay, because people want to get acknowledged and loved. And that is, if we end up with answers when we talk about jobs to be done that are this abstract, we've taken it too far, right? So my argument is that sometimes we can talk about 1/4-inch holes. Sometimes we want to talk about shelves. But if we were at too high of an abstraction level, then we don't really get informed by we can't innovate on that. So we need some specificity. I'll get back to that as well. The theory also states, or the perspective at least states, that customers can have the same contextual needs irrespective of their demographics, right? And this means that in principle, marketers traditionally tend to segment on demographics, right? Oh, this is our customer profile. Typically, a generic profile would be a young 18-year-old girl or 20-year-old girl, and then they would have like a 50-year-old businessman, and they don't have the same needs. That's wrong, right? So jobs to be done theory states that, in fact, a 20-year-old girl and a 50-year-old man can have the exact same needs, right? The needs for entertainment, or needs to listen to a certain type of song, or to take a bath or whatever. There's no such thing in this aspect as demographics that you need at least to pay attention. So this means that it can also transcend or shift a business view of a market space. So Snickers chocolate, if you know Snickers chocolate, I don't know if it's sold in Nablus or Spank, but it's just a chunky peanut butter American type of chocolate. Essentially, when people buy it, they tend to buy it, it turns out, to saturate their hunger. And when they buy another chocolate that's called a Milky Way, they tend to just want to have a nice flavor in their mouth. They just want to feel like they're eating some sort of candy. So Snickers chocolate is, in fact, according to jobs done theory, when people buy Snickers chocolate, what they want to achieve, what they hire the Snickers chocolate to do, is to make them a bit more full, give them a blood sugar spike, and relieve hunger. And so basically, Snickers compete with the banana or yogurt manufacturers, a bag of nuts, or even a sandwich, right? Whereas Milky Way is in a whole nother domain. And when you see that, you can design products and services that compete on the right terms, and you're not too bound up by static market what do you say, market boundaries. Okay, so jumping into examples now, okay? Jobs to be done can be functional. This could be to hang this new shelf, right? They could be social, to be perceived as popular, for instance, or they could be emotional, to feel less lonely. And we all have these different types of jobs to be done, depending on the context. We also have jobs to be done that can be related to the consumption process. Okay, when I order, I want to feel safe that I will get my product as I ordered it without any faults, for instance. When I receive it, I want to know that I don't have to carry it up to my apartment, for instance. I understand how to install it, whatever. All those steps are typically mapped in a customer journey. And I think over focusing on customer journeys tend to understate the importance of creating good products. Because good jobs to be done, problem-oriented solving, can design customer experiences that are way better than whatever current customer process of ordering, receiving, installing, and so forth is. Yeah, and I've covered the abstraction level already. So I think, again, wholeheartedly, that truly understanding and thinking jobs to be done can enable you to foresee market developments and spot successful innovations way more effectively. And a tip is to map jobs to be done before, during, and after core activities. So an example can be to get a nice looking but inexpensive couch. I don't know how many people can relate to this, but I think it's a quite normal position to be in. I need to buy a couch. I want to it should be nice looking and I don't want to pay too much. That's it. The core, in this case, the core functional job is to get a nice looking, inexpensive couch. That's the job to be done. So let's see here. Before that, before the core job, okay, maybe you want to decide where it should be placed, right? We need to find out where do we actually need to have the couch. We need to understand how much space we have available. Can we fit this model? Can we fit that model? Find out how much should I spend? What's a fair amount? How much do I have to spend? Do I need to buy another bunch of other furniture so I don't have the money for it? What attributes do I value the most? Do I want it to be soft? Do I need it to be like ruggy? What do I want? And should I buy new? Should I buy used? Feel comfortable that it will suit my other interior? That's probably something people feel quite concerned about. And so these are all quite common sub-steps in a job to be done when you're buying a new couch, that if we manage to effectively address those, then we might enhance the customer experience and make a better service for ordering couches than if we don't. And some of you might have seen the augmented reality solutions out there. I don't think they're perfect or good enough at all by now. But to answer these questions, some have come up with this solution. So you just can sit with your phone, you can sit in your living room and you can play around with different models of your couch or chair and see where it should be placed, where it fits, see if it fits in the environment and so forth. And so this, having this embedded in your website as a couch retailer alone just lifts the customer experience, right? Because it addresses a lot of these jobs. So this is the logic behind jobs to be done. If we skip forward to the during phase, we want to plan when to go to the store, maybe. When we're in the store, we want to locate this couch section. Maybe we want to get inspiration. We want to identify and compare alternatives. Maybe we want to understand the purchasing order process, place the order, pay, and maybe we'll even need to transport or receive it. For that, yeah, and then you of course need to install it. There's been this. We've seen another player called Luado giving a helping hand with small jobs. They say that is sort of their value proposition. So you pay a certain amount of Norwegian kroner per hour, and they actually just fix everything for you. So if it's furniture that needs assembly, they just carry it in, they transport it from the store, everything sort of as a service. And if you need repair, they fix that as well. So this is basically furniture as a service, right? And they address a lot of these, not all of them, but they address a lot of these needs. And I would like at this point to state that working with jobs to be done on different steps, it's easy to also get too locked in on aspects that are really how do you say it in English? Really concerned or seen through the lens of the way things are today. And if we go back to the true jobs to be done perspective, then all of these steps, planning when to go to the store, placing the order, paying, installing, customers actually don't want to do that, right? They just want to remove them. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They just want a couch, a cheap couch that fits in and all that. And so they tend to remove a lot of friction with this offer. Another example, not related to our couch at all, but since we spoke about hairdressers earlier, and I mentioned Askeladden, this is Cutters. This is a hairdressing chain in Norway and maybe Scandinavia now as well. They have, after doing some customer research, they found out that, okay, customers just really want to get their hair cut. They don't want to spend much time. They're not, at least in Norway, they don't, when you're not in the high end segment, you don't care about talking to your hairdresser. You value paying very little and not talking to your hairdresser more than having sort of the social experience and everything. And they mapped everything and they found that, okay, people don't care about their booking their hair appointment, because essentially when you book an appointment, you just want to make sure that you can actually get a haircut within a certain date. So they only do drop-ins, but they make sure that they always have some capacity. They have skipped the hair wash altogether, because strictly the hairdresser don't need it. They have other ways to go around. It's more of a treatment for the customers, and so they removed a lot of these things, and because they'll be able to slice away a lot of activities that the customers don't care about, they can also offer haircuts for a fraction of the costs of other places. So they basically disrupted the whole hairdressing market in Norway. Yeah, not without complications, but that's the short story. Going back to the jobs to be done example with the couch, after you have installed your couch and it's in place, you might have some jobs as well, right? So that is maybe getting rid of the packaging material, cleaning up, assessing whether purchase was a good one or not. Am I happy with the price, the comfort, and so forth? You maybe want to keep it clean, avoid and remove stains and so forth. Maybe you want to even get rid of the or sell your old couch. How do you do that, right? And so I think that mapping jobs to be done before, during, and after would help us sort of seeing, okay, are there services we can make that take away some of the pain, right? There's no reason why these guys shouldn't also be able to throw away the cardboard and take the old couch with them. I don't know if they do it, but if they had, the willingness to pay would obviously increase, right, for the clients. How many times have you seen like an old couch just stand, I don't know, there, right? Because people really haven't had their made an effort to remove it. So the thought is that the more friction, when I say friction, I mean like energy consumption, physical or mental, from people's minds, then the better. We just want to make the world easier and simpler and more streamlined for everyone. So using jobs to be done, we can do that. There's also nice to be aware of that. When we map the relevant parts or the steps of the job, we all want to understand which of these does the customer care the most about, because often we have a lot of needs, a lot of jobs to be done, but there are only some that are really painful, that we really are willing to pay for, right? So we can ask ourselves, how many and which of these can we actually remove through a new solution and business model? And remember again that in our example, the customer really only cares about getting a new couch. So different customers value job parts and steps differently. And maybe through research, we can find out that, okay, wow, these types of customers have just a subset of the jobs in common. But if we manage to address those needs, then we really have effectively meeting the demands of a segment. So a question that appears a lot, or not a question, but a thing to be aware about, and the problem that sort of arises when doing insights research, right? Is how do we find those jobs? But we can of course read them. I'm sure we could have asked ChatGPT to generate some suggestions, and that would be okay. But we never want to not talk to the customers. We always want to talk to our customers, right? And it's important to know that we want to differentiate between what customers say and what they do and what they think and what they feel. So when we want to find out their needs, these are completely different things. They don't do what they say and they don't say what they think. Depending on the cultures, of course, at least in Norway, people tend to lie a lot because we tend to be polite. And as innovators, it's hard to extract the needed insights. So maybe people lie because they want to protect you from the harsh reality or whatever, or maybe they just don't know. Maybe they don't know. They figure things out on the spot. Either way, people don't always tell the truth. Okay, so we're much more concerned about what people do or what company executives or whoever's our customers are do than what they say. And therefore we need to talk to our potential customers, right? And if we need to talk to our customers, that means we need to know how to talk to them, right? So let's take now as sort of the last section before we jump into the Q&A for today. Let's see how we can actually map jobs to be done. And I saw as well that it was mentioned some other in the comment fields here how to do that. Interviews is a very effective way to map jobs to be done. Okay. So we might want to make observations. We'll talk more about that later in the course. We might want to observe people or have them play around with our solutions or just empathize with them. I really, really, really value the running interviews. But that means we need to respect and be aware of some do's and some don'ts. And let's start with things not to do. So one thing we don't want to do, and remember, I just want to iterate on that. In these interviews, our job now, our main job, the only thing we actually want to do is to figure out what are their needs. We just want to learn. We don't want anything else. We want insights, right? It's that step we're at in the process. We want insights. So one thing we don't want to do is selling. We don't, in an interview, customer interview, want to sell. Our goal is learning, and it's not sounding clever. We don't want to ask, hey, look at this. Our solution does this. What do you think? Huh? You like it? Or this is our solution. Would you buy it? People tend to say, oh, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I would buy that. Yeah, sure. Okay. And then they give you the thumb up. But again, they say things and they do other things. So rather ask them, okay, when you buy this or when you do this, what are your decision criteria and why, for instance? It's much more neutral. Don't talk about solutions at this point. There are interviews to run to actually talk about solutions and get feedback on solutions, and they are very effective. But at this point, we want to map our customers' needs and understand their jobs to be done, okay? So, so for the same reason, we don't want to explain our solution does this, blah, blah, blah. Just ask, what are the most important things you are struggling with? Or what keeps you up at night? Or if it's for an executive, what are you measured against? What is your performance metrics? If your boss pats you on the shoulder and says, this was a good year, what have you accomplished in that year? And never, ever attribute. So attributing to the subject, and the subject is the person you were talking to, right? that can corrupt your insight. So don't say, unless you know it for a fact, never say like, hey, you're a busy person, or you seem to be struggling with. Just be super neutral. You don't suddenly, if you say like, hey, you're a busy person, they say, yeah, I might be busy. And then they tend to like go into this role of a busy person. We want to have like no bias and keep things as neutral as possible. So act like scientists. Act as if you're partly scientists, partly designers. What does a normal day look like to you? That's a super good question. Or what keeps you up at night, as I mentioned. And don't get opinions, lastly. Don't get opinions, get facts. So then, what you think of or you like, no. Ask, when was the last time you, or how often does this happen? Or that gives you a whole another way of understanding the actual situation. So things to do is adopt a beginner's mind. Assume that you know nothing. Assume that you want to avoid interpretation. Assume that you have a lot of own bias. Try to spot it and avoid it. And if there are some things that you didn't wanted to map out, suddenly you go into an interview, you maybe have an hypothesis about something that you think is painful for them because you want to check out this idea you have, right? Suddenly something comes up like a job that is super important to them, or a pain they have that is super painful that you didn't expect. And then that could be very, very interesting to take a note of and dive deeper into later. Those are often super interesting insights. And listen more than you talk, right? So we're all made with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a good reason. I don't know if you have that term in Arabic, but our role as an interviewer is to listen, to hear, to observe the body language, and to learn. And while we talk and elaborate, this can't happen. And also try to ask why, to get to the bottom of things, right? So answers are like icebergs. We rarely get insights from one reply alone. So you want to ask, okay, why is this thing or that thing such a pain for you? Or why do you need to do this or say that? Or yeah, you get my point. So last on this one is always try to open doors at the end. If you can keep contact information to someone that you have done a needs or jobs interview with, then you can always come back to them later with an actual solution to try to validate that solution. Again, we'll talk more about that later. And always ask if there's anything you should have asked that you haven't asked. Maybe they sit and have some urges they want to communicate, and you can't get that if you shut the interview without asking them. So try to open doors at the end. Now the 2 last slides before the Q&A I'd like to show you is regarding the physical mapping of this. I would recommend you to use the customer profile that I have presented. It looks like this. So when you run interviews and you talk to people, you want to try to map or document your findings according to this circle. So the customer jobs to the right, the pains down below, and the gains on top. Doesn't have to be very different colors, but it should be super clear to you what are jobs and what are pains and what are gains. And when those are captured, then we want to see, okay, what are the most important jobs you want to address? What are the jobs with the most potential? And the way we just visualize that is by stacking the notes or the findings from the most important on top to the least important on the bottom. So basically like this, and that gives you much more control down the line. Maybe you'll work on some other things for a month and then come back and see these notes. Then you immediately know which ones are the most important. Maybe it's even easier for you to tap into the thought you the mind you had when you, or state of mind you were in when you conducted the interview, and so forth. So yeah, I think that was the most important part on the jobs to be done. I see that the clock has run a bit away from us now, so I think maybe we will just go ahead and run the Q&A. So I remind you once again that we are currently in the process. We have now spoken about ideas and insights, right? So as I said introductory, we will spend the time tomorrow to see how we can go from ideas and insights to actual sketches, surface or identify various assumptions, and then test them and then evaluate it. So these 3 steps, sketch, assumptions, and test, will be the ones we spend our the most time of tomorrow, in addition to looking into to some team management and self-management skills. So yes, guys, let's run a Q&A. I think we have the time until 10 o'clock Palestinian time, and then we'll round off. So feel free to write questions in the chat, or I don't know what you think, Mr. Jalal, if we should do it.
If anyone would like to have a question, he can raise his hand.
Sorry, I'm not sure I heard you there.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah,
Vemund, do you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. Okay, I said if anyone would like to have a question, he can raise his hand maybe, or in the chat if he would like.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good. So please feel free to share any questions, any thoughts of what you've seen so far.
Maybe I have a question, a couple of questions.
Yeah,
Will someone have question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Vemund, do you hear me?
I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah. You mentioned that in the innovation process that the insight is optional.
Yeah.
Why it is optional process?
Yeah, that is a good question. And the reason is because we, if I just bring up the process here, the whole, the blue loop down here, the validation loop, or is also sort of a source of discovery. So if you can imagine, you already have a business model sketched out that you want to test. You can then surface the assumptions. Some of those would inevitably be, are there enough people that are actually interested in this? Is there a large enough market for this, etc.? And these are the things you want to test. And so effectively, the whole testing phase will actually give you the same types of insights as the other part here during the insights phase. The reason I recommend sort of to extract some of the assumption and testing into the insights to work more exploratively is to utilize as much of the design thinking perspective as possible, and to keep an open mind and maybe inform you a bit initially before you sketch out business models. If we work too scientifically, too lean startup and build, measure, learn, then we sort of, before we have spoken to anyone or done any research, then we just, okay, I want to check out this business model, then we might miss opportunities. So that is the reason.
No, thank you. We have a question from Alma. She said, what could be the best strategies for a new market entry?
New market entry, okay. So I think it's a fairly general question, so it's difficult to answer in a well manner for me off the bat. I could start that new market entry can happen in two ways, right? If you use a growth matrix, basically, you could either take the products you have and then take them to new customer segments, new markets, or you can think to introduce entirely new products into for the customer or adjacent customers you already have. So if I interpret your question as how do you take your existing products into new markets, then I think I would start to ask myself, firstly, what are the jobs to be done my product or service solve as is? And once that is solved, I would ask myself, okay, what other jobs to be done could they solve? And if you have a fairly good answer of those, then you might have a sort of an indirect feeling for which market you want to test to see if there's an interest for your product or solution in. And so if you have like one or two markets you want to test out, then you want to go in, as I just explained in the interview process, you want to map up, do they actually have these the jobs to be done that I know my product can deliver on, or do they not? And if they do have those jobs to be done, how large is their pain? And so it's a partly sort of a business exercise where you want to see the lucrativity of markets and what competitors and offerings are there. But you also want to do it like from a design customer centricity perspective and find out, do they need whatever jobs to be done my products or services are delivering. And I think it's a good question also because it's a common one for established companies. They often tend to ask, okay, we have a setup now. Maybe we have a distribution rig. Maybe we have a warehouse. We have some staff internally. We have these employees. What other stuff can we do to grow? Given our capabilities, what more can we do? And then my answer will tend to be sort of the same, but never make any bets on where to enter before we have validated it with customers. If that makes sense, please let me know if that was unclear.
Excellent.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome. Concerning Vemund, you mentioned the statistics about 80% of the new ventures fail, right? Yeah, and you mentioned the top reason is the financing one. They don't have financing, right? Or the cash flow. But what I think that this is an old or a common mistake that every entrepreneur does, right? Because the entrepreneurship, it is like maybe it becomes now 30 years of education in entrepreneurship. And how it comes these entrepreneurs fail, put themselves in this trouble of financing.
I'm not sure I understood the sorry, Mr. Jalad.
Yeah, my question is how it comes that entrepreneurs in 2024 fail in the financing issue.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question, and I'm you're referring to this figure. I think ran out of cash. I'm not positive actually. This is a survey made by CB Insights. It's quite recent, and it also aligns well with a couple of other surveys. I do see some differences depending on which region you look in and how you actually define a startup and so forth. My perception of it is that people tend or startups tend to focus on the wrong things. I have this feeling that, okay, if you run out of cash, of course you might be having like a small access to investment funds, but I think in general it is because you prioritize wrong. It is because you actually spend your resources, your time, and your money as if you were a more established company than you actually are. You tend to make bets on hiring people maybe, and you tend to make research more theoretically, like how large is this, more as we spoke of earlier, like more traditional estimations of things, and you use that as success criteria, and then you actually have no product that is you haven't like checked out customer problem fit, you haven't checked out a problem solution fit and so forth, and so you can never actually reach product market fit. And this was the thing that happened to us as well in the startup. So whenever the company, even after my time in the company I worked in, when they asked the investors for more money, it became harder each time, right? Because still no documented market need. So I think a lot of the long answer short, I think a lot of the other points here, like no market need, flawed business model, pricing cost issues, not the right team, all of these things can be allocated partly to the ran out of cash phase. And that's why I think it's so important to learn business model design and validation.
Thank you, Vemund. We have a question from Samsung. Do you give a training courses that we can register in them? Yeah, this is one of them.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I normally my occupation is like more than enough in terms of the time I allocate. So I usually I did more presentations and courses previously. I now tend to focus even more on client work through my employer, Reodor. But I'm super happy to both be holding this course and maybe generating more and more updated course content in the future. So as of now, I don't have any set courses that you can enlist to, but I'll be more than happy to keep the door open and let you know if I should make some. There are also some webinars that are public that we make at my employers, but they are much smaller, like 1 hour slots and quite niche. But this is one of them definitely, and I hope to get back to you and having more content. Thank you for the question, by the way. I'm touched. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Be our guests. I think there is no more questions, Vemund.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank you very much for the very exciting and very informative presentation and long presentation as well.
Yeah.
And tomorrow we'll have also the second, inshallah, the second part of this training course. And we are will be very happy to have you with us. And I think tomorrow it will be also of more training and more practice in our validation of the ideas.
Correct. Quite correct. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. And wish you all a great evening and see you tomorrow.
See you, Vemund. Thanks a lot. Good.